Yeah, I think. Look, and I think I'll say this. I mean, I think it's legitimate to have conversations about people's personal conduct in a campaign. Obviously, the way people conduct themselves in a personal way or on a personal level is relevant to how they might conduct their job. So I think that's all fair game. But to say that just because someone was somewhere at a certain time of day and that's some sort of an indication of wrongdoing, I just think that's way. I'm not sure if the right thing to say is overboard or off target, but it's just not substantive. There's just no evidence that Representative Baird did anything wrong. He's a newlywed. The idea that he was running around with these women, I think, is just sort of hard to believe. Anyone that knows Representative Baird, and I want to speak to this because, supposedly someone said something disrespectful or made some sort of threat to the Capitol Police that they were going to go talk to their supervisor the next day and get them in trouble. And Milligan wants to make a big deal out of that. But, there were 4 legislators there. Out of all of them, I haven't met personally Representative Neal, but I've met all the other ones and known them for a while. I would say that Representative Baird was probably the least likely out of all of them to be the one that would make a comment of that kind. I mean, 2 of them, Representative Burris and Representative Carter, I mean, you and I have had our plenty fair share of run-ins with them on Twitter and elsewhere. So, I mean, they're fairly abrasive, fairly in-your-face type guys. I could see them making that type of remark. But, I mean, Representative Baird is one of the calmest, most polite, mild-mannered people I think you'll ever meet in your life, certainly in politics. So I just can't imagine him, looking at the Capitol Police and saying, well, I'm going to talk to your boss about this tomorrow. I mean, it just doesn't seem like something that's even in his temperament, much less his character.
To your point, I think what you're also saying is that there's no way to prove which person was, quote, possibly unsteady and which person was talking negatively to a member of the Capitol Police.
Sure.
And so this whole thing is kind of frustrating to me because I do think, I do have a problem with people coming to the Capitol late at night. Possibly there's alcohol involved. But now with Max Brantley. Now that these quotes are out there from the actual conversation that took place, now this is the story. You know what I mean? And it is more about it. Unfortunately, now that I know what I didn't know 30 minutes ago, now this is more about the candidate Dennis Milligan than it is Duncan Baird.
Well, and I'll just say, Paul, just for all your listeners, anyone that might be concerned, I mean, I know that you go above and beyond every day to make sure that what you're saying is accurate and fair and 100% correct. So I just want to vouch for you on that fact that I can say for sure that you would have never run with anything that you thought might not be correct or just part of the story. I mean, obviously, look, I'm working on a story myself about this right now, and as I was writing it, I had to go back and completely start over because I'm in the middle of it, and then the audio was released. So I had to go back and just erase it all and start over. So this is a quickly moving story. We live in a 24-hour news cycle now, and things happen so quickly with the internet and social media. You do the best you can, but you can't always stay 100% on top of everything, especially when you're doing a live radio show. So don't feel bad about that at all. And I think your listeners know where you stand on that. And I will just also add, look, I don't know either of these candidates very well, and I don't particularly have a preference between either of them. I have some substantive policy disagreements with Representative Baird when it comes to private option and other things. But it's just like you said now. I mean, instead of talking about the issues and instead of talking about the candidates, now we're talking about Dennis Milligan and whether or not he's jumped the gun here. We're looking at these audio tapes to see whether or not he did make some sort of a threat or some sort of blackmail. And I think the whole thing has really sort of backfired on him.
Yeah, it has.
And I think it's gonna hurt him big time politically. But at the end of the day, it's frustrating because, again, I think personal conduct is something that is fair game and that should be discussed, and the way that someone conducts their life is absolutely a picture of how they will conduct themselves when they're in office. But unfortunately, I think for Dennis Milligan at this point, that may be more of a reflection on him and how he conducts himself personally than it is on Duncan Baird at this point. you hear the tape, and folks can go listen to it at the Arkansas Times. I hate to send traffic to the Arkansas Times, but if folks want to go listen to it, they can hear it. And it reminded me of, I was just listening to it, and I just stopped and I said to someone that was sitting next to me, I said, this sort of sounds like a father putting his finger in the face of a kid and lecturing him because, he got caught with a Playboy or a pack of cigarettes or something. I mean, you hear Representative Baird, and he's just like, He's just so polite, and he's just getting this lecture from Dennis Milligan about how he's such a horrible person, and, all this stuff about how it's going to hurt the Republican Party. And he says something interesting in there, too, Paul. 4 or 5 times Milligan says something like, well, I want you to know, Duncan, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to be behind this. This is other people that are going to put this out, and they're going to use this against you. And so it was presented as if he was doing Duncan Baird some sort of a favor by coming to him and letting him know that he was saving him from some sort of public embarrassment.
Yeah.
And the whole time, now, the whole time he sounds like a dad lecturing a kid, but now that the tapes are out, Dennis Milligan's doing a media blitz. And he was on the Dave Ellswick show talking about this, and he's been all over the Arkansas Times talking about this today and last night. He was on your show. I mean, and so for him to sit there and say, I'm not doing this and I'm not going to use this, and now all of a sudden he wants it out there everywhere possible, it just seems, let's say, disingenuous, to say the least.
I agree, Nick, and I'm gonna take some time and think about this. I will say I'm a little disappointed, just the way the show's gone today. But I appreciate your segment and coming on and shedding some light.